You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, September 23rd. I just moved this weekend, and I didn't get to watch the game live. I didn't get to do an instant reaction show, but boy, do I have reactions today on a Monday. And joining me, as always, is Weston. How you doing today, Weston?
I probably have similar reactions. I'm doing as well / miserable as most of the 49er fan base today. But there was some good in the game. Not a lot, but some good.
Yeah, I mean, me and Weston will, of course, as we always do, highlight those silver lining performances when we go through the 49K Player of the Week segment of our show. But for now, I mean, I think we got to talk about some of the obvious here, and it is kind of a little doom and gloom. I do, of course, have to point out just some of the injury news that we got right before we went live here. So this coming from Kyle Shanahan speaking to the media, like I said, just a couple minutes before we went live. After a terrible game against the Rams in which the 49ers just absolutely collapsed there at the end to add insult to injury, defensive tackle Javon Hargrave has a partially torn tricep, and he will be out for the rest of the season. Linebacker D. Winters, who exited the game, he was in there coming back after an ankle injury. Well, he re-aggravated it in this game against the Rams. So he's dealing with that. And then, of course, Brock Purdy, who had a phenomenal game. And I can't wait to talk about that. But, before we do that, we got a lot to talk about. It's not so great. But he's dealing with back soreness, and Purdy is day-to-day. So it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better for the 49ers, is basically what all of this is looking like to me, Weston.
Yeah, all three of these injuries definitely hurt. The Javon Hargrave, I mean, I know we were joking that like this hasn't certainly been his best year in the last two seasons. I felt like it was an overvalued and overpriced, free agent acquisition. But at the end of the day, like we can all agree that the defensive line play has not been strong, and this is just another piece in that's missing for the rotation, et cetera. And for all intents and purposes, one of the starting pieces. The D. Winters one, we all loved what he did all off season. I wanted to see him on the field. I wanted to find, every way that it would be more of him and Fred in the absence of Dre Greenlaw versus, Devondre Campbell out there. DFF has just looked flat-footed, so you really wanted to see him get back in the mix. And I'm not surprised with Brock Purdy. Actually, I remember saying something to my wife, like, after the game, I don't know if they pinpointed the play, but to me, it felt like it was on one of his scrambles. There was one where he slid awkwardly, like foot first. And then there was another one that he dove forward. And it's just like, just felt like the body bent a little bit. And that's just a lot of pressure probably on your lower back. So I think it was from one of, he was only sacked once, as the stats would say. But to me, I think it was on one of the scrambles that he just like, that muscle's probably just like real tight. He just fell, went down a little awkwardly.
Yeah, so I guess my concern with this team right now, like I said, is that it just seems like it's going to get worse before it gets better. And by the way, just another piece of injury news before we go any further. Also speaking with the media, Kyle Shanahan said that Christian McCaffrey is seeing a specialist in Germany about his lingering Achilles tendonitis issue. That doesn't feel very encouraging to me, the fact that he feels he has to go all the way to Germany to see a specialist on this issue. And right before I went live, like I saw Rob's reaction to this. Shout out, Rob. He said, feels like a last-ditch effort to see if he could play this season. And I don't know, maybe it's just like an overreaction. Maybe it's just a bad feeling that I have about this season. when he said that, I'm like, geez, like, why else would you go all the way to Germany? Like, because if you're on IR and you're expected to return within like what 4 weeks, I don't know if you'd
Yeah.
go to such great lengths. So I'm a little concerned about that, but of course we'll continue to wait on that and see what comes of that meeting with the specialist for Christian McCaffrey. But I don't know if you had seen this, Weston, but I feel like this is worth discussing as well.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of agree with Rob on this. It feels very much like an educated guess, but it like if you think of the extremes here, right? We were told 4 weeks ago that if this was a regular season game, he'd be playing. To here we are flying internationally to get consultations and things of that nature. It just doesn't. Something's missing. It doesn't all. The math ain't mathing right now, and all signs point to we probably won't see Christian McCaffrey in the 2024 season, and that's realistically what my gut is telling me, and that's what my gut was telling me when he went on IR. That it was just like this is a calf. This is a guy who needs to feel 100% to go out there and do all the things that he does, and I just don't know if he gets there without all the proper rest, which is probably like an entire season.
Yeah, so I guess it's not just me that feels that way, but believe me, we are really hoping that's not the case for Christian McCaffrey, but we'll continue to monitor that one. Got this comment from Corey. Thank you, Corey, for the donation. He says, "Call me a hater, but can't even think of Purdy's good game as a silver lining. Rams defense at 7 starters out, including corners, but yeah, played well." All right, this is where I think is a good segue into this game because so Weston, as I mentioned, I was moving this weekend. I literally had my phone on do not disturb yesterday because I told myself like, hey, I'm not going to be able to watch it live. I don't want anyone to spoil the game for me. Like I want to be able to watch it and like, not know what to expect. Of course, like in the age of social media and just like having your phone always on you, like that doesn't happen. So I did actually know, or I had a strong inkling that the 49ers did lose this game before I watched the game. But I did not know the score. I did not know the fashion in which the 49ers lost the game. And so I kind of went into it with just knowing that they lost, but not knowing how. So my first thought when I thought that they lost or that I found out that they lost was this is gonna be a game where like Purdy struggled, the offense struggled to get points. Like that is what I was expecting. And I'm watching this game last night and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like we went up 14-0. Like, wow, this is going great. I can't imagine like how we end up losing this game. And then like in the first half, the Rams do get some momentum. They score before halftime. So then it's 14-7 and I'm like, "Oh, okay, like this must be when it happens, right?" And then like the 49ers kind of run away with it again, like they're up by 10 and I'm like it's like late into the fourth quarter and I'm like when is this going to happen? Like how did this fall apart? Cuz I'm watching I'm like they're 49ers still holding on. Like, yeah, the Rams are kind of trying to get some things going, but up 10, like this late into the fourth, this is awesome. And literally, it was like 4 minutes in the fourth quarter. Like, and I'm still thinking that way. But anyway, all that to say, obviously, I did end up seeing how it ended, but I feel like I had a different perspective of that game just because going into it, I knew that they were going to lose but just seeing how they did, I guess like in a way I didn't feel as bad, but like I obviously it's still terrible. It's still a collapse of some sort, but I was pleasantly surprised that Purdy did play well because I was expecting him to struggle without all of the starters on offense. But I think what Corey's saying here is valid because yeah, the Rams were missing a lot of starters, so I think even with that you take it with a grain of salt and it's like, well, maybe the expectation should have been that he would ball out.
No. Well, yes, and yes to everything about the game. I don't know, Steph, when you were watching it, I don't know if you felt it. It's something that I just kind of felt sitting on my couch was it just never felt like the 49ers were going to put it away. It just never felt. And you can't let Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay hang around. I don't care who's out there, guys. There's something that I just need to stress to everybody. I know we're saying Rams defense, 7 starters out. Yes, the 49ers were missing defense. This is the ultimate league of parity, right? In some cases, there is very little difference in skill levels between potentially a starter and somebody who might be their immediate backup. Yes, there's a difference between the superstars of the world, Cooper Kupp not playing, Deebo Samuel not playing, like those things, like those really hurt. But this league, it doesn't just mean because they're missing players, you go in and win. Like you still got to play, all that means is that makes that team more dangerous because they might be coming in thinking these guys are going to sleep on us. We know what we have in here. You have to be very careful of that in this league, right? Both teams get paid and both teams have the ability to fill out the roster. So I do want to, I can't stress that enough, that it's just because somebody's hurt and banged up doesn't mean you're going to mollywop them. Look around the league, right? I don't think a single 0-2 team lost yesterday. Ask anybody playing Survivor League football right now who might have, right? Like what these leagues have been cut down to. You thought the Giants, who look like the worst team in football, for all intents and purposes, spanked the Browns, right? And that is even after fumbling the opening kickoff and letting them score on the very first snap of the you had the Panthers, who could have been the worst team in football, go in and curb stomp the Las Vegas Raiders on the road. The Denver Broncos come into Tampa Bay. Why I'm saying this is because that does not make this Rams game a layup. What hurts the most about it was it felt like it was there for the taking and it was never took, right? It was just never took. Like it was there. Whether that's play calling, execution, this is what happens when you let bad teams hang around. In all intents and purposes, that's what the Rams felt like on paper. It's gonna come back and bite you in the rear, and that's exactly what it did, and that's what was frustrating. I just feel like this team is playing with no urgency, and then we see all these injuries and things of that nature, and this just feels like we all thought it was going to feel. It just feels like that quote unquote Super Bowl hangover where the ball's just not going to bounce your way for the season. That's what it feels like through 3 weeks.
It definitely does feel like a team playing without urgency. And I think even Lenore after the game said like the 49ers were complacent in this game. And that's just like, it's just crazy to me. I mean, just because, look, I always say you can't overlook an opponent. And even in my preview show, I was like, with a quarterback as talented as Stafford, me and KP were talking about it. We're like, we still think Stafford is like the best quarterback in the NFC. And it's true. You can't breathe any life into a team like that. Like you can't give them any ounce of hope because they will take it. And we know that, yeah, the Rams start 0-2, but they're a well coached team. Like we know this. So you can't mess around with that. And look, I know with a lot of starters that were out for the 49ers, I think we needed guys to step up. Obviously, Jawan Jennings stepped up. I don't know if the same could be said about Ronnie Bell, for example. I'm not even sure why Ronnie Bell was in this game. Because, like, to me, I would have rather seen Jacob Cowing in this one, especially like if you make one mistake and one mistake is enough to get you out of the game, just like Isaac Yadam, for example, like he had that pass interference, he got pulled for Renardo Green, and then Renardo Green does the same thing. But I'm just saying, like, if you can make one mistake and one mistake is enough to get you pulled from the game, like why wasn't Ronnie Bell pulled from the game at that point? Why did he return? And then we don't see Jacob Cowing in this game. That I think they could have used some new blood in this game like that to get something going, to get a spark. It still seems to go back to this narrative that I do believe in, that Kyle Shanahan just doesn't seem to trust rookies. He does not. I know we saw Garendo in this game for a little bit, but I would have loved to see Cowing. And who knows, maybe we're talking about this game a little bit differently, but I don't know. That just kind of, bugged me.
I think the thing that I agree with you. I think Kyle has very limited trust in very specific people, especially rookies. I think you know how I feel. I don't think Ronnie Bell should even be on this football team. I don't think he did enough. I thought he did enough to make the roster last year as a rookie. I don't think he did anything impressive whatsoever throughout the year and then continued into the offseason to be on this team. Why I do think he made the team is because he does block his rear end off, right? Like he does try, he is aggressive at least. And I think Kyle likes that. The problem with liking that is this man's going to be in the route tree. he can't, he hasn't shown me anything that he like catching the football. Like go back to his Michigan tape. This dude made some of the craziest contested catches that you'll ever see for a guy who plays bigger than he is, all the cliche terminology. It just hasn't, he just hasn't equated himself well to the league. And it was glaringly obvious in two big moments throughout the game. One was obviously going to feel a lot bigger than the other, but then it leaves you scratching your head like, why is Jacob Cowing not out there? Somebody that we saw have a pretty successful offseason, right? That everybody's getting hyped up over. I think the coaching staff was feeling fortunate that was the guy that they drafted and he was kind of paying dividends. And then in real time, I didn't see him on the field outside of special teams, and I'm just wondering why, right? Like, or what blackmail Ronnie Bell has over the coaching staff that he needs to be out there on a regular basis. It's things like that make the losing harder to comprehend. It's like, well, why was that the decision? If it made sense to me, I'd understand, but it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I don't understand.
And I got this comment from Steve-O here that says, I'm not the only one in the world. I'm the only one in the world that didn't know Bell sucked. Nah, y'all lying. He did okay last year, had a few drops. So I thought Ronnie Bell was okay last year. I didn't think he was bad. But in training camp this year, when I saw him, he was very up and down, like very inconsistent. He'd have a couple of, I'd say for the most part of training camp that I witnessed, he struggled. And there were maybe a couple of days where he was making crazy catches, much like the one he dropped, honestly. Like in some of the camp practices I saw, he was making catches like that. He was making acrobatic catches like that. But for the most part, he was inconsistent and leaning towards the side of bad. And it's not just me who said that. Like a lot of the media folks who cover this team didn't even have Ronnie Bell making this roster. And I think a lot of the reason that he did end up making the roster was because of the Brennan Ayuk holdout. And then also the Ricky Pearsall, injury as well. So, okay, fine. He's still on the roster. That still doesn't explain why he's out there ahead of, Cowing. Maybe he was looking good in practice. And again, like, this is what he does. Like he'll look good for some time, and then he'll drop some passes like this or struggle. So I thought it was just funny though how as soon as Bell dropped that pass, you see Kyle's reaction, his arms up in the air, and it just reminds me of that meme. We're all trying to figure out the guy who did this. It's like, Kyle, like you put him in there. He was in there. So yeah, obviously I think Kyle makes these decisions with the expectation that guys are going to execute, they're going to deliver, they're going to step up in key moments. But I feel like there's been so many times that we've had that expectation for certain guys and they just have not come through. Shout out to Juwan Jennings for actually coming through in this game. But like, I remember a time where there's like Ray McCloud, like Ray McCloud would make mistakes like in games last year when Debo wasn't there. Like Ray just didn't look good, right? No. And now he's looking great in Atlanta. So and he's getting peppered with targets. So I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, I guess it's just interesting to see that. And so yeah, I wouldn't have had Ronnie Bell in there personally, but I also don't know what goes on behind the scenes and all that. But yeah, that's just my thought.
I think the hardest thing to comprehend is we're all just searching for reasons, right? I think as fans, we want to be able to point to one, maybe two things to say that's why we lost, right?
Yeah, it's never that simple.
The reality is this team if I'm being real with you, right now through 3 weeks, this team has zero killer instinct. Zero. And I use killer instinct. You can say urgency, you can call it complacency, you can call it a million things, but they expect to show up and be better than them. And that's not the case. That's just not the case anymore, especially when you're an injury riddled team, right? Like one of the coolest things about the 2019 version of the San Francisco 49ers is outside of like George Kittle, Richard Sherman, DeForest Buckner. What other household names were up and down that roster? Nobody yet. Nick Bosa's a rookie. He has improved himself, right? Deebo Samuel's a rookie. You got Emmanuel Sanders you bring over halfway through the year. Like you did it with Matt Breida and Raheem Mostert and why am I drawing a blank on Kendrick Bourne? Like these are the names that you did it with. You can do it. They almost did do it yesterday. Yeah. It's just no urgency there to put the team away, period. You push that to 21 or Moody makes that field goal or Bell comes up with the catch. The game's over. The game's over. But it's a culmination of things that led to those events that just said, you let that team hang around. You actually, I don't say this about the 49ers often because I love them. Like, you know how I feel about my San Francisco 49ers. They didn't deserve to win that football game at all. Period, point blank. They did nothing to deserve to win it. As a team, I think there was players that deserved to walk out of there with a W, but as a team, collectively, they didn't deserve to win the football game. You got defenders falling, Charvarius Ward falling on his face in coverage, Demetrius Flanagan falling on his face in coverage, guys walking around. You don't want to win. And I don't ever say that about a player because I'm not in your huddle. I'm not in your locker room. I don't know what your wants and desires and what you're thinking. What I can tell you is from what I am watching, if there is any pushback from the other team, they don't want to be there. And how does that feel coming from the team that's probably been the most physical this league has to offer over the last 5-6 seasons? And I don't even feel like they want to be on the football field.
Yeah. Well, as you were talking, and talking about defense a little bit, it did remind me that's one of the things I want to talk about, right? Like, I think through 3 games of this season, I feel like this defense is not really up to the standards that we thought it would be, up to our expectations. This is now the second year in a row that we kind of feel that way, right? Going into the season. Now, I know what everyone is saying, right? Like, oh my God, is it time to fire Nick Sorensen? Like, people are going there already. And I wouldn't go that far extreme, right? Because I think obviously Nick Sorensen, there's a learning curve. First time, defensive coordinator. I think he needs some time with this unit to, I guess, kind of gel and figure some things out. Clearly. I am not saying I don't see that there are issues here, because there definitely are. But I think it's going to take some time, just like it did with D'Amico. I remember D'Amico struggling when he first got this defense. What I am disappointed with the defense so far is the secondary, because you have 2 guys in Mooney Ward and Lenore who have been here, who I know are great players. And like, look, I didn't think Lenore was that bad in this game, nor the week before. So like, I'm not trying to single him out or anything. I'm just saying, as a unit, collectively, the secondary hasn't been up to the standards, or hasn't lived up to the hype that they themselves and this team, everyone else, like, built in the preseason training camp going into the season, right? Like, I feel like we expected way more from this secondary, and we just haven't seen it so far. Like, so I don't know what's going on. Again, maybe it could just be the time that Nick Sorensen needs. And I do think this defense will eventually look better. But I did kind of expect the secondary, at the very least, to look good out the gate. The pass rush hasn't been there either. I think I saw the time to throw for Stafford yesterday was 3.13, one of the slowest in week 3.
It's a lot
I
of
think
time pro football.
that is a lot of time. And he did get sacked 3 times. But I think we all kind of agree. Like, everyone watching that game probably thought, where's the defensive line? Like, I feel like they could have done better, especially knowing that the Rams offensive line, they're literally scraping the bottom of the barrel for their
Yeah.
offensive line. There are guys who have never started in the league before that were getting reps against these defensive linemen of the 49ers. And like a few of them that we have thought very highly of, right? And so I think, like I said, just underperforming at all levels with this defense. I'm going to give them time, but like that doesn't mean I'm not disappointed about the output so far.
Yeah, I mean, you say potato, I say potato, you say tomato, I say tomato, you say defensive, the secondary, I'm going to say defensive line is what the glaring issue is to me, but the reality is they all equal each other, right? Like we always said, right? A defensive backfield is only as good as the defensive line. You can't cover in the NFL for 3.5+ seconds. It's next to impossible to do those sort of things. There's just no pressure there. I think that's the biggest difference from the successful defenses in the past. The ability to, like, San Francisco is at their best when they're not blitzing and they're getting home with 4 and they can drop their backers who cover well into coverage. You're playing more of a zone than man-to-man. It bodes well for them. But for, a year plus 3 games, I just have seen such inconsistent pass rush. Like, is it time we start having the conversation of like, hey, what's Kasurek doing with his guys? Maybe we gave him too much credit in previous years of finding these reclamation projects that they keep dipping in that well, and there's just nothing to be found. Like Nick Bosa's only one human who gets chokehold, puts in a chokehold every single play. Like he can only do so much. But I think the biggest problem is I actually think the defense has been okay. I'm not as down on the defense. And yes, I agree with you, Steph. It will come with time, especially now that Huff is back, right? Another body that's in there that's just got to get his playing feet, underneath him and game stamina, etc. They just have had big lapses in big moments. Like why Devondre Campbell is in any position to be covering anybody up the sideline. Like I know that man is his responsibility, but is that the guy we want running step for step with anybody, down the line in coverage? Probably not. On the Mooney, on the big, not the PI, but the big Tutu Atwell catch, right? To go, was that when they tied it? No, that's when they went up. It was on the big Tutu Atwell catch, like it just busted assignments against Minnesota. Justin Jefferson getting over the top when they're on their own 3-yard line. Those are just mental mistakes that are just really glaring at big times. I don't think they, for a 60-minute ball game, I think they're putting together 55 minutes of solid tape. It's just those 5 minutes, those busted plays, they're very ill-timed and they look far more egregious than they are. But I do suspect it'll get better. And I am not on the fire Nick Sorensen. I don't even care if this defense is really bad this year. Like, I don't want to see him go. Like, they need some continuity there in terms of scheme and et cetera. So I think he gets this year, next year. That's how I would handle the scenario, regardless of like how they play. But reality is like, hey, this offense was supposed to be putting up 30 points a game, and it's not. It's not. If your defense is going to give up a little bit, what's the goal? Is to outscore the other team.
Yeah, I think across the board, I don't think obviously this team is looking as good as we expected it to.
No, they're 1-2. They're playing like crap.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is.
Like that's just to put it mildly, put it nicely. Steve says they want to be at the Super Bowl already and not do the work. This reminds me a lot of the Warriors, except when the Warriors did it, I'm talking about the Golden State Warriors basketball now. But when the Warriors did it, they'd already won a couple rings at that point. So it's like, okay, fine. If you want to slack off a little bit, like, okay. 49ers don't have anything to show for their climbs up the mountain, right? And I think it's true. I think it wears on you having to climb the mountain every single time. Like you don't don't want to do this work. But
Yeah.
in order to get there, you have to do this work, right? But yes, I think that goes back to your sense of like not seeing the urgency
Yeah.
from this team, right? It's just not there.
And that's hard to just turn on. And I agree with Steve-O's comment here. 4,000%, right? This team is filled with people that have been on this roster that have done this year after year with the 49ers and gone the full extent that the season has to offer. And it is really arduous, especially in these first 5, 6, 7 weeks of the season. It's almost like, get me to the bye week. Let's come out of the bye week and let's go on a run, because that's all we got to do. And that reality doesn't change so long as they don't fall too far behind the 8 ball in the early part of the season. This is still the NFC, right? To me, there's not a single team outside of Minnesota right now that looks like they're light years ahead of any other team. So it's still a winnable conference. Here's the reality. Starting 1 and 2, it just changes the talk track. You're not talking about home field advantage anymore. The mantra this year is going to be winning in, right? In. Just get in. Got to be in it to win it. Get into the dance. 7 teams get there. I don't care how poorly they're playing right now. If this team even gets remotely healthy and get some of these people back, you can't tell me they're not one of the best 7 teams in the conference, and probably it'll probably shake out that way when all is said and done. But sitting here through 3 weeks, like, not so much I feel vindicated about the Minnesota result after seeing what they just did to D'Amico Ryans and the Houston Texans. Like, oh, okay. So this team is not going to be a walk in the park this season. So that made me feel better. This Rams one will hurt them and haunt them more because it's a divisional game against a divisional opponent, somebody that you've had their number for 3-4 seasons in a row at this point, and it's one you should have won. You should have won this one. You should be 2-1, welcoming in a wounded Patriots team like into your home, and it would make those first 4 or 5 games, like we talked about last week. If you walk out of first 4 or 5 games and you're 4-1, like, you're feeling good. It's still 1 loss. Most of the league is going to have 1 loss at that point in time. Had to win that one yesterday. Had to win it.
Don't look now, but the Seahawks are 3-0 and lead the division. Everyone else in the division is 1-2 in the NFC West. So,
I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the Seahawks, because at any moment I will take advantage of an opportunity to shit on the Seahawks. That's how little I care about them. But the truth is, they're playing good ball, but they haven't played a powerhouse yet either. You know what I mean? They have played essentially who they had so far: Denver, Miami, who trotted out their 3rd string quarterback in the middle of this game, and who they open with. They open with Denver. I think they had Denver. It doesn't matter. They haven't played the meat of their schedule yet either.
Okay.
We haven't either. And they're 3-0, and
yeah,
we're 1-2.
Whatever makes you feel better, Weston.
I'm just saying. That's why I led with kudos, right? Like, hey, they are 3-0, but this is the reality. Like, you're 2 games back, game and a half back, right? Like, in the standings, 3 games in, 2 games back. You need to. The expectations the goalposts need to be moved for the short term, right? And that's more about get into the dance versus 1 seed. That's the conversation they need to be having internally.
Yep. There needs to be a lot of conversations happening in that building, and they're going to be ugly. I think
as they should be.
As they should be. So, like, yeah, someone was saying earlier, like, Bronny Bell needs to go into the doghouse. Yeah, I mean, I think it would warrant him going to the doghouse. What happened on Sunday?
Needs to be
At
cut.
the same time, though, I think Kyle Shanahan should keep that same energy for his special teams coordinator, Brian Schneider. Dude, This is now several years of mediocrity for this special teams unit, and they're mid, but like, at worst, they are what we saw yesterday. And why do we continue to keep this around? Like, why do we continue to accept this? Like, that's what I don't understand. And so I just wish that there was some energy for Brian Schneider and what has happened with this special teams, because it is not special, and it had a large hand in the loss. I know obviously you could look at the Jake Moody miss, you can look at the Ronnie Bell drop. We say it all the time, like there isn't ever just one reason why a team loses the game, right? But
Yep.
obviously special teams had a pretty big hand in it, in my opinion. Like if there's anyone who shares the larger blame, I think it goes to special teams. And I think that has to fall on Brian Schneider, because it has now been, like I said, a long time with this kind of performance from from the unit. And like
Yeah.
I haven't seen it improve at all. So I'm really disappointed with that, and I hope we don't have to wait till the end of the season to fire someone who's been awful for years now.
No, I think this is how you send a message to the team, right? Unfortunately, there's got to be a scapegoat. There's got to be the sacrificial lamb. And it's probably easier to do it to a coach that you can just as easily fill with the plethora of coaches that you have there, especially somebody that's not necessarily achieving results, than it might be with a player. This is where I wish the brass would take the. Did you catch Antonio Pierce's press conference after the Raiders lost to the Panthers?
I saw the one.
Saw the tagline. Yeah. That is the stance, and only an ex-player who's an animal on the football field can take that stance of like, all right, people are making business decisions on how they want to play this game. They ain't going to play for this team. That simple. That is a mentality. When we talk about a locker room, a mentality, following the leader, like, yeah, it's going to rub some people the wrong way, but you're like, God darn it, that guy's here to like, that needs to be done. If you're going to right this ship right now, if you're going to reinvigorate, if you're going to inject, catch lightning in a bottle, inject some enthusiasm like that, I think that's what you need to do. Like, guys, the standard doesn't change around here. Because, like, Steph, the reality is like, here's another thing that frustrates me. I can't turn it on with like, Kyle's never going to win it. Kyle chokes. Kyle won't kill. Da-da-da-da-da. Well, I thought he dialed up a game plan that was to win the game, right? I mean, like we talked about this before. Players got to execute, right? Kicker, you got to make your kick. Receiver, you got to catch the ball. That wasn't a difficult catch. Like, you came back and there was nobody on you. He called the right plays. I just feel like I don't even know how to like phrase this without like going on a tangent. So I might just say, like, forget that I'm even going down this path right now. But it's like, who outside of the Kansas City Chiefs has played more consistent football and good football over the last 5 seasons in the NFL? I'll wait. Tell me a team. A lot of that has to do with coaching. All those guys that we tout as superstars, they were young bucks and rookies when this guy took over the team, and is part of that maturation process and part of putting them in good positions to become the players that they have become, both offensively and defensively. I don't know. This is where, like, that's the conversation. This is what needs to be happening in the locker room, is like, the goals, just because we're 1-2, the goals don't change. I will remind everybody, in 2021, this team through 6 games was 2-4 through 6 games. Still found themselves in the NFC Championship game. Can be done. It's not the way you want. It's not the path you want to take. It's certainly not the path of least resistance. But a team with a lot of veterans who are proven, if they get healthy, get on. Trent Williams can stop sucking air and need to go in for IVs, every other series. You never know, but they can mount. Sorry, Steph. I know I'm just like rattling right now. I apologize.
Oh no,
I'm like shaking in my house.
Like I said, I didn't have the instant reaction show yesterday, so I had nowhere to outlet all this, and I'm sure you feel the same. So yeah, I mean, this is a little therapy session. And just before we go into talking about some silver linings, all right, maybe 2 in this game, I just want to remind everyone to like this video, because trust me, you're not mad at me, you're mad at the 49ers. Don't take it out on me. All right, still hit that like button. I tell people all the time, because I think people come in here and they're like upset about the loss and they don't feel like spreading the love to that like button. But hey, it's not me you're mad at. All right. All right, so Weston, let's get into nominees for 49K Player of the Week. I think me and Weston talked a little before we went live, and we're just like, yeah, this is going to be a short list, like, obviously. And I think if I had to guess, it's probably the same. We have the same people on our list this time. So I'm gonna let you go first this time again, Weston. So what did you? Who do you want to nominate first?
I mean, it's Jawan. And how is it not Jawan Jennings? It's 12 targets, 11 catches, 175 yards, 3 touchdowns. Remember earlier when I said this was a collective team loss, but there were a couple players out there that clearly wanted to win and deserved to win, even though this team deserved to lose? This is one of them. Point to me and show me somebody who has just took better advantage of an opportunity given to them with a Debo out, your first round, rookie wide receiver still hurt, like no Kittle, no CMC, like you're gonna get an opportunity to be a focal point in this offense, especially because I think from what I saw, the Rams game plan was they didn't view Jawan as that weapon, right? There's not enough tape of Jawan being this crazy weapon other than like
Right.
third in Jawan to think that it's gonna be there. I think they went above and beyond to take Brandon Ayuk out of this game, right? And that's what that's why it's so important to have BA, Debo, Kittle, CMC, because you can't take them all out of the game, and they're all superstars that can make you regret that. When the superstars have dwindled, take BA out, and Jawan shined. I mean, that one catch where he goes up and over. Here's my favorite part, and everything you needed to know about this game is I think Jawan was surprised he caught that ball, right? Because he got up and the celebration was like looking at his hands like, woo, these boys came to play today. They're not failing him. Outside of everything he does, like, so it was really cool to get like 40, 50 text messages throughout the game from people that I know being like, dude, I picked up Jawan this week, you know what I mean? Like in fantasy because of all these other injuries. And like, who deserves it more than that guy for this team? A guy that I think plays 180 miles an hour on every single snap and just put himself into the national spotlight. And I think he deserves to continue to see targets even when all the pieces come back. I mean, he looked that good, that dominant. And what was crazy for me with Jawan is like, Jawan's a body catcher, and he's kind of like he's long and lanky, a little bit goofy on that first step. And I've been watching him since college. I'm a Tennessee Vols guy. That's where he went. And he's got that jab step where he catches the ball and he like always jab steps back and then tries to get upfield. I didn't see a lot of that yet. I just saw a lot of like get north, like grit attitude. And he took advantage of his opportunity. Jawan Jennings, hell of a game, but I'd be remiss to not tip my little bit of my cap to BA saying like, I get it, dude. Like they were basically had you in a cloud coverage all game. They'd rather lose to somebody else than let BA, the lone all pro left on the offense, beat them.
Yeah. I mean, Jawan Jennings went nuclear in this game, like 175 yards receiving, 3 receiving touchdowns. I think we knew and that Jennings was good. I think we could appreciate that. I don't think we knew he was capable of this.
Yeah.
Right. Even with the Rams being out so many starters, like I wasn't expecting this. I was expecting Jennings to be a huge part of the game plan and all that, but yeah, definitely not this. And tell me if this is shocking to you. Jawan Jennings is currently 3rd in the NFL in receiving yards, tied for 8th in receptions, tied for 1st in touchdown catches. He's caught 18 of his 21 targets. It's 85.7%. Shout out to Al Sacco for tweeting that out. But that's
cheaper than all the other receivers on the roster.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? Because now you get all this revisionist history tweets of like, man, we should have never even paid BA. Well, the respect that defenses are giving Brandon Ayuk tells you everything in that regard. Although I still would like to see, Ayuk get more. It was great to see, of course, Jawan Jennings ball out. And I was listening to 49ers talk earlier today, and Jennifer Lee Chan, said she saw Juwan Jennings like heading to the locker room, coming to the game, and he just looked locked in, like a different type of Jennings is kind of like how she described it. Like he was in that mode from the moment he walked into the stadium. So I love to see that. And when you said, the 49ers need more like closers or guys who just like have that urgency, like yeah, Jennings is that guy, right? And they need more of that. And yeah, like there just feels like a lack of that. Like even not to, go segue into another topic here because I don't want to derail myself or this nomination what we're doing here. But a lot of the new guys that they've brought in, even dating back to last year, they don't have that urgency. None of them do. And you think like, oh, this person's signing with the team, they're gonna buy into the culture. And like it just hasn't happened. Like there's a disconnect somewhere with some of these new guys. And anyway, but Jennings is one of the good ones, obviously, and the 49ers drafted him, so he's homegrown. But yeah, I love this for Juwan Jennings. I agree with you. KJ said sad that Jennings' two best games ended in loss, overshadowing performance. Like I feel awful about that because here's a guy who doesn't get a lot of like opportunities like this, right? But when he does, like he balls out, like he shows you what he can do. And another thing that Jennifer Lee Chan said is that he was one of the guys who left early, like after the game ended, like before he didn't even speak to the media in the locker room. Like he left before that. So I can only imagine how he's feeling, right? Like shoot, like it happened again. Like I put on this crazy performance and we still lose. Like that's a shitty feeling because no one's going to remember your like 176-yard, 3-touchdown performance when it comes in a loss. Like it'll be very few and far between that we talk about this in the future, right? Because
Or
of the
that you
loss.
were a field goal away from never having to pay for a meal for the rest of your life in the Bay Area if you were Super Bowl MVP. Like, yeah, I feel
Yeah.
for him. And we all
Yeah.
know Jawan's, he's an emotional guy, which is one of the things that I love about him. So, he felt really heavy walking out of that stadium. A little bit of like rightfully so. I'm going to use the wrong word here because I don't have another word for it, but I'm appreciating this element. I am not like, this is no disrespect toward Jawan, but like he probably was feeling it a little selfishly. Like, again, like I just had the game of my life and I can't even celebrate it. It's going to be overshadowed by this scrub receiver who dropped the ball, or our kicker who missed another big time field goal when the chips were down and it mattered the most. So I feel for him. But hey, Jawan, we appreciate you here when we talk about 49K player of the week. He had a hell of a game.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I'm going to nominate this next person here. And these two kind of go hand in hand because 3 touchdowns for Juwan Jennings. Well, the guy throwing him those touchdowns, Brock Purdy, obviously, as you can imagine, had a good game. Like I said, Weston, I think I'm looking at it from the lens of like kind of expecting Purdy to struggle a little bit in this game just because he had so many, guys out. I'm glad that he kind of ripped that narrative to shreds because even I was starting to buy into it. I was like, God, like these last week he didn't look great. In the if you look back at all the games since like the Ravens game last season, he hasn't looked so great or put together. But in this game, I thought he was awesome. Like he was phenomenal, and it was the way he was extending plays. He was willing his team to a win. I think I look at it that way, and he was right. And so again, when I was watching this game, even, and I'm thinking, oh, the 49ers like lost. That's all I knew. Again, I was expecting Brock Purdy to struggle when I knew that they lost, but then I'm seeing him, and I'm like, wow, like Purdy's doing everything he can to get this win. Like he's putting them in position to win, and he did till the very end, right? So yeah, that definitely didn't go unnoticed. 292 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, passer rating of 137.1. He also had 10 rushes for 41 yards, and holy cow, like I just have to point out the one where
He
he's
ran
straddling
63
the
yards.
sideline and he like reaches his arm out
Yep.
to get the first down. Like, man, wow, like that's the kind of effort you want to see from your quarterback without putting themselves in harm's way. I think Purdy did a better job at that in this game too, which I appreciated. But yeah, it was just a great performance from him, just being able to extend plays and just get the best out of what was out there for him. And in
Yeah.
this case, it was mostly Jawan Jennings. But yeah, it just definitely didn't go unnoticed. And also a shame that the 49ers didn't win, even despite Brock Purdy having as good of a day that he did.
I'm going to say something that I'm not sure everybody would agree with. This was the best game I've seen Brock Purdy play, and I'll tell you why. He had some good ones in that first year when he came in against Miami, and then obviously beating up on Tampa with Tom Brady, blah blah blah. But to me, no pressure in those games whatsoever. You're the third string quarterback. You're a rookie. Just go out there, trust the coaches, let it rip. Here we are, a season and a half removed from that, with unreal expectations on what you were supposed to be able to accomplish as a quarterback. You are now a starting quarterback in this league. We're in MVP voting territory of the previous year. The pressure's gonna feel different. And this game was hyped to be, all right, guys, Brock's going to be the $50-60 million man next year. What's he going to look like without those weapons? Because he's not going to have those weapons once you got to pay him all this money. Steph, you're part of these conversations. You hear him all week. So you know what this was about. And he went in and he did it. And he did it. And he played. I thought he played aggressively. I thought some of those throws to Jawan were vintage Brock of like, I don't give a shit. I'm just gonna put that ball in there because I'm an accurate thrower of the ball, and I'm gonna try to fit it in. What pains me is everybody wants to point to a single play right now, right? That is the I missed Ayuk over the top. So if you could go any quarterback, any game, any tape, they will all tell you there's 4 or 5 throws that they wish they could have had back, right? It's just sometimes the brain, talking about split seconds, like the brain doesn't process what your eyes do to let the ball go. It's crazy. And I've watched a couple different angles of that play, and I think Brock saw him, and I think he saw him late, and he got excited. If you go back and watch it, he kind of like quick shuffles, and I just don't think he had his feet under him. He was in the back of his lineman when he wanted to let it rip. I think his brain said, "You're not going to reach him, and that's going to be a ball for somebody to come pick off." Like, again, I think he saw him, whatnot. Still made a play out of it. Still did whatever. That was one of the ones I think he scrambled for like 64 yards to get 3 yards or whatever it was. But I thought Brock played a hell of a game. I thought it didn't matter who the Ronnie Bell drop. The second one is quintessential, like description of what I'm talking about. He didn't care. He went through the progressions. Ronnie Bell was not. He was the last option, but he went through his progressions and he placed the ball right. And his receivers got to make a play. Brock did everything he possibly could in a game. Was it mistake free? Absolutely not. Nobody plays a perfect ball game. Doesn't happen. I don't even care if you got a 158.3 rating. It's not reality. He played a phenomenal game. Again, not mistake free. There's things that he'll tell you that he would want back, and Kyle tell you who you want back. But I'm telling you, this was the best game that I saw from Brock Purdy based on expectations of this man's career. I thought he balled out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that because he was missing so many key pieces of this offense, it was him. It was all him, making this happen. He's throwing to Jennings. He's throwing to Ronnie Bell. He's putting the ball on the spot, right?
Can you zoom in on this one? I don't know if
Yeah.
you
So, and then for the audio listeners, what I'm showing here is the play that a lot of people are talking about, in
watch
which
that stutter at the last second. I think this is when he sees him and says, "I want to get it out there," and then he like two shuffles and he's
yeah,
about
yep,
to, and then I don't think he trusts where his lead foot's going to extend to. Like he's almost going to step on the back of the leg of his lineman. See, like just that quick hesitation, and I just think he got gun shy, and that's fine. That's not. He's got to make that throw. He's got to see that. The elite quarterbacks will see that. But if we're talking about a single play across 30 pass attempts, countless scrambles, I mean, he played a hell. Let's put it this way, Steph. I've actually been a big detractor of Brock's, right? Since his rookie year. I was fully on board the Trey Lance train. I wanted to ride that thing till the wheels came off. So I look for reasons to doubt that Brock is the guy, to see if this team wants to make a decision to go elsewhere before dropping
right.
$60 million. And yesterday said to me, God, he's the guy. And I know I'm not alone, because you got a lot of talking heads around the league right now. And I know sometimes we like to say that they don't know what they're talking about, blah, 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 that are, I mean, using the words like elite around this guy right now. I don't know if I'll use that word, but I loved what Richard Sherman had to say about him. I thought it was just like so great to hear, because Richard's one of those guys that he knows the game inside and out, played it at the highest of levels, has seen picked off countless quarterbacks, and he's heaping high praise on this guy. That those little things from people like that tell me my eyes aren't lying to me.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, and just to add context again for the audio listeners, it's the play in which Brandon Ayuk appears to be wide open, and that's the one where he danced around in the back for like what felt like 13 seconds, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
literally. And he
yeah.
had time. The O-line wasn't
Oh yeah, no,
porous
he had the
yesterday.
time. He definitely had the time. So what Shanahan was asked about it, why he didn't throw to Brandon Ayuk. Here's what Shanahan said. Quote, BA had a deep curl route. They busted a coverage and BA did the right thing and went to that hole. It caught Brock by surprise because BA wasn't in the right spot. Brock thought about it, but he didn't know where the rest of the coverage was. So, I mean, he hesitated like we thought he did watching it. And, I wish he would have just pulled the trigger on it. But, again, it doesn't take away from what was a great day otherwise for Brock Purdy. Now, Weston, do you have any other nominees?
No.
Okay, same.
No.
All right, so now I'm going to
Shout
put up
out
on the
Jordan Mason.
screen.
I'll just say that.
So,
Continues
yes,
to run hard.
yes, we got to give some flowers to Jordan Mason, for sure. So, all right, I'm going to put up on the screen our two 49K Player of the Week nominees, Brock Purdy and Jawan Jennings. This is going to be a tough one just because, like, their performances are very much attached to each other. But I would like to see your guys' votes in the live chat. Let us know who you want to see for this week's 49K Player of the Week. In the meantime, me and Weston are going to very quickly put some people on notice. And I'm going to go first, Weston. I am going to say Devondre Campbell. Because he is
Good.
very, very clearly getting picked on by opposing defenses, particularly in coverage, because not only is he not Drake Greenlaw, like, duh, no one's going to be Drake Greenlaw. He is not even a good linebacker. Again, especially in coverage. And they said it multiple times on the broadcast even, that is like, yeah, like he's good at the run game, like, but he's not good in coverage. It's like, dude, like, that's just not what you want. Because, yeah, I mean, obviously teams are seeing this. You're going to continue to get targeted when you're in coverage, and teams are going to try to put you in those situations where you have to cover someone downfield to create those mismatches. So, yeah, Devondre Campbell definitely on my notice list this week. I don't know how the 49ers can necessarily move off of him. Again, we talked about D. Winters. He re-aggravated his ankle injury, so he's not an option for the 49ers. Weston, you talked about DFF earlier. Like, he's obviously not the answer. So I don't know what the 49ers do, right? I think they just have to keep rolling with Devondre Campbell, but he's still on my list. Watching you.
Yeah, he's on my list too, so I'm glad you said it. He just doesn't look like he fits. And I think, what was the comment that he made like when he was leaving the Packers is that they weren't using me right. They weren't using me right. I'm playing great ball. Like, well, 49ers aren't using him right either because I don't know what it is. It just doesn't look good. It just shows you how important a player like Dre Greenlaw is to this defense because of his versatility and what he can do. I just don't see it getting any better for Devondre Campbell, if I'm being honest. And that's not saying he's a bad football player. He just doesn't fit what this team is asking him and to do and what he needs to do. I got somebody I'm putting on notice, and this might be like consecutive weeks that I think I'm putting this person on notice, but Charvarius Ward. I'm going to start calling him Sleepy Ward out there. He just, honest to me, looks like he's asleep. A big misstep, in that Tutu Atwell catch at the end of the game last year. And you are an all-pro DB. You are paid a lot of money. But, Steph, how long have I been saying it now? That he's not the best defensive back on this team. I'm at the point where I really hope the 49ers don't shoot themselves in the foot and invest a crap ton of money in this guy to bring him back in the offseason. I think you got to go younger. You got to go cheaper. I'm taking that money and I'm putting in the defensive line. But fortunate for him, they haven't played a lot of pass-happy teams like so far just yet. So the statistics don't look that real bad. If you go to PFF and whatever, I'm just telling you, the eyeball test, he's not doing it for me this year. And the back half of last year, if I'm really being honest, like it's just been, he started really well with this team, I think. And we're like, this is great. And then it's just kind of fallen off a cliff over the last 8-9 football games. That was a 49er for me.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of it maybe has to do with injury. Remember, this week he was dealing with
the knee.
No, it was like knee injury that he had. It was knee and something else. I think it was knee and hamstring this week in practice. So I don't know if that impacted him at all. This game, but I mean, last week too wasn't his best. So yeah, I mean, like you said, 2 weeks in a row now, and you don't want to be on Weston's naughty list 2 weeks in a row, guys. Like
no way.
It's not good.
There's no recovery.
Right. There's no recovery. Like you're not coming out of that doghouse. All right. Let me give one more. All right. I don't want to go too crazy here. I already talked about Ronnie Bell, so I'll let him off the hook this time. But and people, get your last minute votes in, please, for 49K Player of the Week. I'm going to go with Brian Schneider for putting on notice, not for 49K Player of the Week. God, no. And this is one's a coach, right? Like usually we put players on notice, but hey, coaches aren't always safe here. So Brian Schneider, man, I'm done. Like I'm done with him. Like, and I've been done, but like I wanted to be very politically correct and not overreacting in the past. And I wanted to say like, okay, like obviously I don't know. I don't know why I gave him passes before, but like I'm not anymore, man. Like he's not good. I can't think of a single thing he's done to improve the special teams unit like from when he first got here. It's the same. It's the exact same. It might be worse, honestly. So yeah, something has to change, and he's on notice for me. I'm hoping he's on notice to Kyle Shanahan as well, because like I said, like we just can't accept this anymore.
It can't. I mean, if your team, if it's going to be a struggle season, right? If wins are going to be more difficult to come by for whatever reason, the offense is not putting up 30 points a game, the defense is letting up 23 to 24 game, whatever it is, all the more reason to be polished in the third phase of this game. Listen, I can't blame the coach for a kicker missing a field goal. Can't, right? The coach is not out there kicking. But that was the game plan on that final punt, was to just air it out, right? Like not get closer to the side. Like there wasn't a conversation. It's preparation. It's situational awareness. Yeah. It's things of that nature that I have a huge problem with. Special teams for the San Francisco 49ers during the Kyle Shanahan regime, right? This is not just a Schneider thing. This is like All of them. Like they've all been bad. They can never get this thing figured out. I don't understand it. But it's gonna plague them. And you know what? In a season where you might be lucky to win 9 or 10 games and sneak into the playoffs, you can't let special teams cost you give you 2 or 3 losses in the year. Can't.
Obviously, for the 49ers, the margin of error is looking like it's much smaller now, right, than what it used to be. So to your point, yeah, special teams can't be the reason that this team loses. And like I said, with the margin for error being smaller, it is now like very well could be a reason that they lose a game. And I think it was on Sunday. So,
Yep.
All right, Weston, who do you have for 49K Player of the Week?
Javon Jennings.
Me? Javon Jennings. We have another unanimous 49K Player of the Week for Week 3, Javon Jennings. Look, buddy, I know that 49ers didn't get the win, but you get 49K Player of the Week, so at least there's that consolation prize. Hey, we got you here. So, JJ, hope you enjoy your week. And also, he's nominated for FedEx Air Player of the Week as well. So I think he's a shoo-in to win that one. I can't think of a more dominant performance.
I wish everyone would tag him in this video and retweet at him and do all of that just to let him know, like, listen, your teammates might not appreciate what you do, but we appreciate what you're doing out there, Javon.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. All the people who voted in the live chat. Appreciate you as always. All you guys that tuned in, make sure you like this video because, again, you're not mad at me. You're mad at the 49ers. Take your anger out on that like button if you are angry. And like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Consider turning on notifications as well so you know when I go live. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. Appreciate it. But from me, from Weston, have a good rest of your Monday, folks. Peace.